And we're live. Hello, my friends. This is Lada from AstroLada.com. And I rarely do this, but today I would like to introduce you to a new budding astrologer from the new generation. I think she is one of the future of astrology, one of the future transformers and enlargers of this incredible field. And as you know, I very rarely introduce new people to you. I tend to work with people that are very tried and tested, and I would never give my recommendation for someone that I haven't observed for months and who hasn't been recommended to me by multiple sources. And this new wonderful astrologer, like really established astrologers came to me and said, you have to check Jamie, you have to talk to her. So I'm very excited to present to you a beautiful, wonderful, very deep uh, and very transformational, but also extremely practical astrologer, Jamie. Hello, Jamie.
Hi, Lada. Thank you for the beautiful introduction.
I'm very excited. After our test reading, what I loved about the way you approach astrology is that you are not just talking about spirituality and qualities of the soul. No, you go down to the practical side. You're like looking at the chart of someone you didn't know. You told them their profession. You told them who they're working with. You told them how to upgrade their business and what kind of business they do, and even how to expand it. It was very practical. I loved that because I mean, we also need this other more psychological, spiritual astrology, but many people need astrology for practical advice, like what colors should I use for my website or to increase my wealth, or when will marriage come, or is my partner cheating, or how to create more money according to my horoscope. And you were giving such very specific, and you were even saying to the person you didn't know them, you were saying, I can see either a child or marriage and child and marriage this year for you, and they're getting married and they're expecting a child. And the person says, are you sure you never told anything to that astrologer about me? I said, no, unless she knows something through the internet, found you, but how would you know who you are? So I was quite impressed, and that happens very. I'm like, I'm quite, even though I'm an astrologer, I don't believe much. I have more scientific slant of mind. So to believe in someone's gifts, and even in astrology, takes me a long time. So I'm very excited you're here. And the topic you have chosen as a Scorpio yourself, aren't you? You're a Scorpio?
No,
Yes.
I have a Scorpio stellium and a strong eighth
Oh,
house.
stellium, stellium. Okay. So you
Yes.
talked about trauma. That's a very interesting topics, and you have found through your research that there are three types of traumas. Everyone has Scorpio and eighth house in their horoscope. Say for me, Scorpio is my career, the 10th house. My eighth house has something else. Everyone has Scorpio or the eighth house where we store the traumas. And I'm really excited to hear about your research and share your insights with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for the beautiful introduction. Yes, like I think that we all want to be successful at something in life. And like one of the big things is that when people want to figure that out, they're like, okay, well, I want to I want to understand my psychology, what motivates me, processing my traumas. And something that I've noticed is that like things do get separated. And I think that that fragment is why so many people aren't successful. And it's important for us to recognize that we're spiritual beings here to have a human experience and to combine the mind, body, and soul with everything. And I sort of have this process where it's like the trifecta for everything that I do. And so what I find really interesting when it comes to like processing your trauma and understanding your psychology is that these are ruled by Scorpio, but it's important to remember that Scorpio is a water sign and water signs are spiritual. So including that spirituality is practical, like, and like you mentioned, like I like to be practical. I'm water dominant and I'm very psychologically inclined, but one of my personal pet peeves is that there are a lot of psychologically inclined astrologers that don't give that practical information, and that bridge I think is just so important. And so this is where I kind of like put a lot of things together. And I think the first thing is like recognizing that like where you are in your like your state of trauma, I think is a big thing. And then also working with your mind, which is which is psychology, working with your body and regulating your nervous system, and working with your spirituality, and looking at like, you know, every chart, every approach, you know, is like every person is going to be different, like what's actually going to be best for you. But I think that it's important to look at all of this holistically, because I feel like things do get chopped up. And so I do also include medical astrology into this as well. So I'll be talking about all of that. But basically, what I first noticed is when it comes to the three types of trauma that I noticed in Scorpio, they're trauma triggers, trauma loops, and trauma healing. And so with trauma triggers, it's like it matters less what's going on. There can be positive things and negative things. You're just upset and triggered by everything. And with the trauma loop, what I noticed is that there's trauma loop and trauma healing is where people have the most misunderstanding and in like where they're at. And so with the trauma loop, like you can be in a certain situation and remove yourself from it, but then you can like go back into that same loop. And sometimes people kind of realize, because of the timeline of things, like say someone constantly has this history of getting into toxic relationships and they leave the relationship, they go into another one, but sometimes people might be single for a while, so they're like, oh, I'm finished with that trauma, with that trauma. And it's like, no, you're not, you're just on a break. Or like instead of being with someone who shows like their red flags in the first month, it's in a year, you know, and you know, or like the relationship, honestly, it can that like that's not the root of the problem, that's the symptom. If the issue is self-worthiness and it's showing up in a relationship, but your money is doing well, and then that flips, you know, sometimes there's like these invisible loops, or you get into these larger loops. So it takes you longer to realize as you're moving about, oh, I'm still in this loop. So there are like these different things that show up. And what I noticed is that when someone is in a trauma triggered state, they're in a fixed mindset, they're in a state of survival. The part of their brain that tells them about possibilities and growth is shut down. Whereas with the trauma loop, it's less about that, but there's something for you to learn that you haven't experienced yet. So you're continually being re-looped. So when you're, you know, the question really becomes, if you're constantly in this situation, asking yourself, what do I need to learn? What have I not figured out yet? But I think that one of the most effective ways to identify whether you're in a trauma loop or not is that I have a lot of clients that are psychologists, and and I've been a medical researcher, and something I noticed is that a lot of people, or I've had clients tell me like, I don't understand why I'm still single. I'm really aware of my traumas. I've worked through them. So that's not the issue. Tell me why I'm single. And that right there, from an astrological perspective, tells me that you're actually not, you haven't healed. Because if you have an awareness, a hyper awareness, a focus of your trauma, it's paradoxically telling me that you haven't healed because you have too much awareness and not enough awareness. Because Scorpio is frozen water. So if you are like seeing your trauma, you're still seeing it through like this, it's translucent, but it's blurry. You're not able to see things as clearly as you think you can. And so that right there tells me that your perception, are you still able to hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so your perception and reality is a little bit flawed, but also when you've actually healed using derivative houses, you actually shouldn't have as much of an awareness or an attachment and understanding of what your traumas are. And when this happens, when you're actually not in the trauma loop, you're not thinking about your traumas, and you're actually in a state of trauma healing, which I personally believe is a bridge, a conduit between going into the energy of Scorpio into Sagittarius. Because Scorpio is this intense energy of the dark night of the soul, and it's painful and it's hellish and stuff. But once you go through that energy, you go into the energy of Sagittarius, which is optimistic and positive. You see things from a higher perspective. And so if you worked on yourself so that because you're feeling lonely and you want to be in a relationship, and you're still not in a relationship, if you're truly in the energy of Sagittarius, you're not going to feel bad about it. You're going to be in a state of abundance and joy and optimism. You're future oriented. You're working on your personal goals. You're traveling. You're focused on your higher education. Your spirituality. You're going on adventures. This is your personal experience. But also, Sagittariuses are social fire signs. They're leaders. They're going to inspire others. People are going to find your enthusiasm to be so infectious that people are going to be following you. And so if you're not experiencing these things, you're not actually in the trauma healing state like you think that you are. Sagittarius is this state of conscious. It's a new reality that you create for yourself. And then when you move into
Can I interrupt here? That makes so much sense because I had so many painful relationships till 35. I was even married, but for 7 years I was in the Scorpio energy. Why am I so unhappy? Why am I not satisfied? Everyone says I should be so happy. Everyone says perfect partner. For someone, it might be they have no partner. Someone, they might be in a relationship that somehow is not satisfying. And I was stuck in the Scorpio. And then a few months before the miracle happened, I said, somehow I was done with the pain. I said, I'm not going to suffer anymore. I'm over that. I accept what it is. It is what it is. I'm going to embrace it and have fun. And I started traveling. And that's when the miracle happened. And my biggest
yeah,
love, because I started enjoying life and having fun. And everything got so correct. You have to, if you're still in the painful, why is it not happening? The question, the searching, you're still in the trauma. When you move into the
yeah,
Sagittarius energy, traveling, enjoying, having fun, celebrating, even if you can't
yeah.
travel, then you are in healing phase. Very, very
Yeah,
well.
and like, and they actually say that like when you're healing, psychologists say that you have to shift out of the why and into how. Like, so you get into that state of action. And so Scorpio and water is very self-reflective and stuff, even though it is ruled by Mars. But the other thing that I see it as is that like, you're in this energy of Scorpio, this frozen water. So you need to melt, you need to heal so that you can let go of that block. How are you melting that frozen wall, of water? In my personal opinion, I think it's the energy of Sagittarius, because the next sign in the next house is always the resource of the previous sign and the previous house. And so, I believe that you have to have that fire energy. There's something that has to melt that takes place. And so then you see things differently. And then once you're in
But
the energy,
can you rush this process? You can't rush this process and you can't
no,
activate it consciously. Or are there some actions we can take or change of mind, or we just have to wait it out till we get this fire in us? What is it?
You know, I've seen it turn out in so many different ways. For some people, it is that like you have to wait, like maybe Scorpio is in like a cadent house or Mars and Pluto is, and it's got like aspects to like the moon or Venus or something, but if there's more like masculine planets and stuff where it's in angular houses, or there's like a transit activation. And oftentimes, and it seems like that's what you're talking about with you, where when there's a transit activation, it does change things. But something
Yeah.
that I do also recommend for some people is to travel. I have a client who's a Sag rising, so you would think like, oh, like that's a great like placement, but like half our planets are in Scorpio in the 12th house, so it's super intense, super doom and gloom. And so I did encourage her. I was like, you should get out of the country. If you can't move, at least travel, especially since she was having problems with work. So that's your 6th house. So like whenever you're having issues, the house, that area of your life, the opposite house is that opposite solution. And so I told her by traveling, you can get more insights about your business. And so you do kind of shift that energy a little bit. And, there's a debate in like the astrology community about like when do you activate your relocated chart, and I do think that it depends for some people, like, if both the natal and the relocated chart is like, it shows that like there's a faster energy, then you might like connect with it a little bit faster, especially with like big stars and stuff involved. But other times it might take a little bit longer. But when you position yourself and you go somewhere else and you are like closer, or the positioning of the planets are like favorable, you can see it more clearly. You can access that a little bit more too, like
So you
So like
get unstuck from the energy, yeah, because with
yes.
relocation, even relocation, just traveling, you see things from a different perspective because the planets affect you a little bit differently there. Even in the Bible,
Exactly.
it's like, I mean, not that the Bible is, but it's still, they said Abraham, he couldn't have children, and God told him, you have to move to another land. And that's where your riches are, where your children, and change your name. He even added
Yes.
one word to his name. So they were
Mm-hmm.
using methods in the ancient times as well, where you relocate. It doesn't mean go and live there forever, but to shift
Yeah.
the energy a little bit, like you said, it can happen just through traveling a bit. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And
But
also like
people are
a
loving it. I'm just reading the comments, and
oh,
people like
nice.
chiming in, and they're saying yes, and I'm hooked by the
Well,
frozen water before. We can take
oh,
questions in a little bit later if people
yeah,
have, but
thank you so
sorry
much,
to
you guys,
interrupt.
for tuning in because I know that like right now it's like different time zones. So thank you. But yeah, I just think that like understanding and being honest about where you are is really important. Like, it's like to prematurely pretend that you're not at the space that you are. If you want to get here and you're actually here, like that's not going to help you. You may not want to take that extra step because if you think you're here, that's more convenient, but it's not going to help if you're not like based in reality of what's actually going on. And so the other thing is that once you're in the energy of Sagittarius, now Scorpio is 12 houses away from you. So that's Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio. So the 12th house has this Piscean energy, and it's about healing, letting go, dissolving things, and it's a hazy, confusing, like dream state. So I'm not talking about when you're disassociating and suppressing or repressing your memory, but it becomes so far into your past that you become less aware of your trauma. You kind of forget about it. But when you have a conscious awareness of your trauma, that's actually the opposite of the 12th house. That's more the energy of the 6th house and Virgo. That's conscious awareness. Virgo is about being aware of your problems so that you can resolve it. And so I think
Mhm.
sometimes people get stuck because they're so busy trying to heal, 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 heal. And it's like, you can, after a while, you can perpetuate. And sometimes it's about letting go of the healing, and it's about like regulating yourself and then now being open to allow yourself new experiences. Like sometimes I think what happens is that people take an approach thinking that it's going to help them, not realizing that it's not actually the step that's actually the best for them. And so you have to realize, like, do you need to be more active? Do you need to be more passive? Do you actually, are you so busy like trying to push out your traumas that you're not allowing in new experiences? Or some people don't want to face their trauma, so they're just bombarding themselves with new experiences. So they're getting the things that they want, but they can only go so far and it's not sustainable. And that's where I feel like I really like providing readings where I do look at the esoteric and the psychological, because these are important, real things, looking at the body, but also like, how do you apply it in a way that's actually going to be the best for you? What steps do you have to take? Who do you have to work with? What environment is going to be the best for you? What state? When to do this? How to do this? There's so many different methods. And the thing is that I feel like with life and health advice, and there's just certain things where it's always standardized and generalized. So when it comes to working on your psychology and healing your trauma, the default is always people say, go to talk therapy. And talk therapy is a beautiful practice, don't get me wrong. But the thing is that if someone has experienced a lot of trauma, not everyone, but most people, they learn that they don't feel safe in the physical body. So they're ungrounded. So their upper chakras are overstimulated. And then their lower chakras are understimulated. So going to talk therapy can actually be perpetuating you, and you actually need to move the energy down. So there's like this
It's
thing,
like
but
in physical, in workout, or instead of just
yeah,
thinking about your problem all the time and the trauma,
yeah.
you augment it, instead go to the lower food, physicality, grounding. Can you give some other ideas about that?
Yeah, but it's also at the same time, it's not just about immediately jumping into that. It's about feeling safe in doing that. And so like when it comes to like connecting with your body, the big thing becomes you have to learn to regulate your nervous system by understanding where your dysregulation is, right? So I want to talk about the different states of dysregulation and stuff, and then also layer in medical astrology and kind of talk about how like you can visibly see where the dysregulation is in your body, which is so important because I can look at a chart and analyze like, oh, okay, this person is hypersensitized. They are, whereas this other person is a little bit more disassociated in the state of trauma. But at the end of the day, like the planets are always shuffling around, life is fluctuating, life is lifing. So, you know, the answers are in the stars, and that's important, but we live on Earth. So understanding what's going on is so important. And so when it comes to regulating your nervous system, you're either, if you're dysregulated, you're either in this state, or when you're dysregulated, because we're all dysregulated at some point, like you're either in a state of hyper arousal or hypo arousal. So when you're in the state of hyper, this is like when you're hypersensitized. These are the people that when they're stressed, they're spiraling. Everyone can see it. They're like a raw, exposed nerve. They're very stressed out and they're very like this, you know, anxious, like it's very externalized, and it tends to show up in the upper bodies and stuff. And so these are people that benefit from doing down regulating exercises. Whereas with someone who is more hypo-regulated, these are people who are more disassociated. This is more me. And I'm very high functioning under stress and stuff. And so these are people who are in freeze, shutdown mode. A lot of war vets are in this space. And I have a lot of friends that are war vets, and they're like, you and I are so alike. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm like, I didn't go to war and stuff, but like
So is that more like a depression, like losing motivation and depression type of reaction?
No, because I mean, I guess it can be, yes. Not so much for me. Sometimes these are people where they're so disassociated that they might not even realize that they're depressed. So they're just going through the motions. You know, think like the disassociated, these are the people, like basically I would do really well in the zombie apocalypse. I look at the human design chart and I look at people and I'm like, you get to be on my zombie apocalypse squad. And I look at other people and I'm like, and I told my sister, I'm like, I'm sorry, but I don't think you're gonna make
You
it.
don't want me. I overreact to everything. I'm super overstimulated. It's like,
Actually, I was actually expecting when I was talking about the hypersensitized, I was expecting you to be like, that's me, because I looked at your chart.
overreacting again.
Yeah. So, but Matthew can be a part of the Matthew and your son. They can be a part of my apocalypse squad. I want the two of them.
Once my daughter fell down, hit her head, collapsed, like she lost consciousness. I started freaking out, collapsing drama, like I can't breathe. People gathered around me. No one is with the baby. And I can just see my husband is holding her quietly and trying to make her to breathe again. She stopped breathing.
Oh my
It
God.
happens often with children that they, when their lungs are not developed, they can't take a breath when they hurt themselves and they collapse. So I see her a couple of times and everyone thinks something's wrong with me. Like 20 people around me. Are you okay? What's happening? And I'm, it's the baby. And he's quietly saving her life, quietly, like with no reaction. So I can understand the hyper and hypo reacting in trauma. I
Yeah.
thought that because my husband is mostly water and earth, and I'm mostly fire and air. Would the fire and air or people with more masculine planets be like
I mean,
hyper?
honestly, and this is where I think generalizing doesn't work because it's usually more flipped. Usually the fire signs, although I will say with Leo rising, oh, maybe that's what it is. It's your moon in Leo because Leo is kind of like a little bit like dramatic, and stuff. So that can be actually part of it. But usually fire signs are like, but also your Aries is in your third house too. It's in a cadent house. So there's, you have to consider whether it's in an angular house, whether it's a daytime chart, whether Mars is visible, what time of day you were born. You have to consider a lot of this because like, I think that if people look at your chart and people look at my chart and they're watching this video, they're going to assume you're going to be the one that is like the zombie apocalypse. And they're going to be like, oh, she's going to spiral because I'm water dominant, but it's the opposite. So yeah, it really does depend. And so, like, for example, with people who are more in like the freezer shutdown mode, we do better with upregulating exercises like breath work. Whereas, and you can tell me whether this is true or not, but for you, like really intense breath work might make you feel like you're having an anxiety attack,
Exactly. And I've gotten panic attacks. I tried to do breath work. Actually, what helped
Oh
me
yeah,
for
you're
many years
terrible.
is smoking. So
Yeah.
smoking was decreasing my oxygen. And when I stop
Mhm.
smoking, I have too much air and I over again. I'm overly
Yeah.
excitable again. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
And even with breath work,
Absolutely.
like I don't breathe regularly, so I'm more prone to CO2 poisoning. Like I had like my best friend, like he called me one day and I was just like, hello. And he was like, are you breathing? He just like knew. It just like was like, I just had a feeling I need to call you. You need to go outside. And he's like, are you okay? Okay, I have a meeting to get to. And so like, it's also different types of breath work, like you can look at a chart to be like, okay, how is this person's oxygen intake, for example? So there's different things. And like, this is why I really love astrology, because even when it comes to medicine, a lot of the information, it's designed for the male body, not for women, and less for women, for people of color. And so for me as a woman of color, like we're statistically more prone to have autoimmune diseases, and so like we're more at risk. And I have this where my core body temperature is lower. So for example, like doing cold plunges, thank God now they're starting to have more information about how it's not the best for everyone, especially for women. It wreaks havoc if your hormone is dysregulated, which is most women. But for me, my core body temperature is low. Petite women tend to have low
Oh,
blood pressure.
yes. Yes. So that's not,
So
it's
it
not for
does
women. It's
depend,
very
and so
difficult.
like no, and it's like, and as an American, like they only just started testing on women in the 90s. That's a relatively very new practice. So, and like the studies are highly political. So, what works best for every individual really does depend. Like, I can see cold plunge working well more for men. They go through a 24-hour hormonal cycle. But if they're more like overly stimulated, then yeah, like it can like calm you down, but it could also just keep someone from being unable to release the stress. It doesn't mean that they're not stressed. But for someone like me, I'm tense. So going to the onsen, steam saunas, infrared lights are going to be better. And so it really does depend on like every individual what actually does work. But the other thing that you can do is like what I noticed is this correlation is that like you display your dysregulation, not just from the behavioral stuff that I mentioned, but how we move our bodies. And this is where I blend in medical astrology. And I want to be very clear, this is very like generalized. Like I work really closely with one of your collaborators, Dr. Maria Johnson. I love her. And so like astrology can get so specific. So I'm being very, very general here. But like for the purposes of
But
this
but by
video,
the way, Jamie is offering her specific signature reading on the traumas, and not just that, it's very practical, as I said, about unlocking potential of your whole chart with $200 discount for the next 2 weeks for our viewers. I'll put the link below if anyone wants to connect to Jamie. And she's offering 10% discount on her other reading, which is, oh,
are you still
uh,
recording?
I think, no, for some reason. Let me see. Are you hearing? I was not recording, I was streaming. I don't know
Okay,
how
oh,
to
so
record.
that's me then. Okay, yeah.
All
And I
right.
think if
Okay.
the
So
comments,
sorry.
yeah.
Yes, so I'll put the link below if anyone wants to connect to Jamie. $200 discount on her signature reading that covers the traumas plus the practical side of the horoscope and connects both sides, and the medical and everything. And then the other type of reading is 10% off. I'll put the link if anyone wants to connect. But sorry to interrupt
Yeah,
you. Keep telling us that because I
yeah.
interrupted you in the middle of it.
So again, this is very generalized, but like Gemini and Aquariuses are like two signs that rule the nervous system. And what I find interesting is that there's this connection where people who, again, generalization, the people who are more hypersensitized, where the behavior is like more overt and stuff, like the energy shows up in the upper body, which makes sense. It's very Gemini. Like Gemini doesn't just rule the hands, the shoulders, and the wrists and stuff, but like it does rule those areas. And Gemini is a social sign. They're open, they rule toddlers, they're very movable, it's a mutable sign. And so, like, the dysregulation is more visible, and they might have like shaky hands. or like, I don't know if you can actually, it's like they call it the T-Rex. And this is something that people do as like a coping mechanism when they feel stressed out, particularly for people who are hyperstimulated. Like they kind of bring their arms like to their shoulders. And are you checking to see if it's working for you?
Yes.
Oh, are you prepped right now?
Oh, for everything. I mean, I get overexcited for interviews, for
Yeah.
I have 4 planets in the third house, which is Gemini and
Oh,
Aquarius.
yeah.
From
Yeah.
my nervous system is from the smallest things overexcited.
Yeah, and
But anyway,
Aquarius
so
rising. Yeah. And but it's also important to recognize people's baselines because like throughout this video, I've been using my hands a lot, right? And it's not because I'm nervous. It's like when we when we are in movement, we make more connections between our left and right brain hemisphere. And I have 10 other thoughts going on right now, and I'm just trying to like stay focused. So this is why I'm doing it. So you do have to consider a baseline, but there are some interesting insights with this. Whereas people who are more in like freeze, shutdown mode, and again, I'm curious to see, you can let me know if your husband does this, is like it shows up in a more Aquarius sort of a way where it's more hidden. Aquarius is ruled by Saturn, it's more resilient, and the dysregulation isn't as visible. Saturn conceals and it rules the dark. And so like people are like high functioning when they're out and about. And then what happens is that like the dysregulation tends to show up when people are at home behind closed doors, in bed. Like I do this a lot where there's like certain positioning that I do with like my legs when I'm going to sleep. And they call it the flamingo. Oh my God, I love this positioning, you guys. Like it feels amazing to me. And it's when I have one leg straight out and another leg bent at an angle like a flamingo. And
that's the only way I can sleep. That's the only way I can sleep. There is no other way.
Isn't it the most amazing feeling? I love that. Like you're a good example where it's like, you know, we do fluctuate between the two, you know, especially if you're so overly stimulated, you're gonna have to shut down because you're burning so much energy. So
Yeah.
like for me, when I'm sleeping like that, I know, okay, I'm dysregulated, you know, whereas like I don't always realize that when I'm out and about. Like in my chart, my moon squares Venus and I'm a Cancer rising. So my moon is my chart ruler and it's ruled by Venus. It's in my fourth house of Libra. So, and Venus is in my eighth house of trauma. And so I have like this hard time connecting with my body. But I do have a good connection. My moon trines Mercury. So having like knowledge of body awareness really helps me and stuff. And so that's actually something I do want to talk about as well, where like when it comes to all of this stuff, it's like, okay, well, how do you regulate your nervous system, right? There are so many different ways, and similar to like with psychology and trauma, you know, like the recommendation is talk therapy. When it comes to regulating your nervous system, everyone automatically jumps to do somatic therapy. And again, beautiful practice. It may not necessarily be for everyone or where you are in your journey right now. Like I think so much of healing, it starts with here is step one, but sometimes you need to do the prerequisites. So somatic therapy, have you tried it, Lada?
I don't even know what it is.
So I'm curious, like I think you should try it, and I'm curious to see like how you experience it. But it's basically this body movement practice that helps you to move the trapped traumas in your body so that you can release it. And it's different from stretching in that when you stretch, you're pushing against the resistance in order to increase flexibility. With somatic therapy, you're doing it from the perspective of your you're moving your body and you're trying to see where you feel the resistance, and then you want to move your body to in a way where it's like where is that absence of that resistance. And doing this teaches your body this is how you can feel, this is how you can be relaxed, this is how you can regulate your nervous system, and then you bring that into your day-to-day life. But for me, that was a little too advanced because it was moving energy around and trauma around when I didn't feel connected to my body. So what ended up helping me was Feldenkrais method, which is a body awareness exercise. And the philosophy is that your body naturally knows how to heal itself. So, like, say you have a shoulder pain, instead of doing specific stretches, it's like they train you to like move your shoulder in certain ways. And as you do this, they specifically tell you, okay, when you move it forward this way, you feel it in this part of your body. They tell you anatomically what else you're triggering. And so you just keep doing this over and over and over, and then eventually your body will self-correct. But for me, I required taught like someone actually telling me like when you do this, you're also tensing this area. When you do this, you're relaxing this area. It gave me knowledgeable information, which is that moon and Mercury trine. I needed knowledge in order to connect with my body. So for me, and I think anyone who has like moon and Venus and square or opposition, the whole idea of like just feel into it, just trust your body. That means nothing to me. That's not helpful. I need you to give me a graph. I need you to like make it like this intuitive thing into like a blueprint, like, you know, make it Virgo, really explain it to me in a way that sounds ridiculous, to make it really cerebral, because that's what's going to help me understand it. So, but then the other thing is that for me, I have my Scorpio in my fifth house, my Scorpio stellium. So you guys, stellium is when you have three or more planets in a single zodiac sign or house, and that area of your life becomes really predominant. And so like for me, I've definitely had themes of like reinvention, of like death and rebirth and having to process traumas. And so with Scorpio being in my fifth house, dance therapy is really great for me because the fifth house is about dancing. And I have Venus in my eighth house, which is also about trauma. So using body movement, massages are really beneficial. So there's a lot of like,
Can I ask you something? Do we so to see how to heal our traumas, our fight and flight, and traumas is what locks us up in this ice condition of not being able to move.
huh?
Do we look at the house of Scorpio in our horoscope and Pluto and the eighth house? Yes, to gain
I look
insights.
at wait, I'm sorry, ask that question again with the frozen water.
No, I
How
mean to
to
get out of trauma.
oh
So
to get
we're
out
not
of trauma.
in that situation. Do we look what will help us through the house that Scorpio rules in our
Yes.
horoscope,
So
where
I
Pluto
look
is? Or
at the
the
house
eighth?
Scorpio is in the eighth house, where the rulers of Mars and Pluto are. But I'm also looking at like your first house, because we trap traumas in our physical bodies. So I'm also looking at the moon. I'm looking at Cancer. I'm looking at your 12th house of your subconscious, unconscious mind. And it's also important to look at the access. So it's like the eighth house is the trauma. So the second house is the opposite of that. And it's the things that support you. So I'm looking at the second house. You know, the third house is how you connect with that. Your fourth house is in order to feel safe in your physical body, you know, and like we inherit trauma from our parents. So I look at the fourth and 10th house access. You know, some people who do really well with like inner child work, that's fifth house. So there's a lot of like different areas. And then the rulers of these houses, I look at where they're at as well. But also the approach depends too, because so far I've mentioned like the human aspects of things, right? But we're also spiritual beings. Sometimes I don't necessarily look at the houses, but I'm looking like I'm not looking for it, but I'm looking at what is the chart showing me. So if someone is water dominant and they have like, you know, Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, a lot of planets here, or the fourth, eighth, and 10th house, there's a lot of energy here, then I'm going to be looking more at the soul spiritual aspects of things. And maybe it's important for people to work on their previous incarnations through past lives trauma work, past lives regression. But even that, it really varies, because there's different types. You know, there's past lives regression, past life hypnosis. QHHT, guys, is a beautiful practice. It stands for quantum healing hypnosis technique. And it's a type of hypnosis that brings you back into your previous incarnations. And the practitioners are very well trained. They're trained to understand the sound of your voice, looking at your neck to see how your heartbeat is, to determine how deep, like, is it safe to bring you in deeper? Do they need to pull you out? And it's designed in a way where there's other types of past lives regression where people come out of the physical trauma, like carrying what they actually did. So if they have like burns or bruises, they could actually come back with that. So QHHT is designed to create that safety so your physical body doesn't bring that trauma back. And it's beautiful, but for people who aren't very who have a hard time with vulnerability, who have a hard time conforming, that are really resistant, stubborn, they might not necessarily be like the best candidate for hypnosis and stuff. So for that, like spiritual alchemy is a practice that can be really valuable for people. And it's a way where they teach you how to heal yourself. But not everyone in their chart actually shows that it's best for them to heal themselves. Like my Venus trines Chiron, and my chart ruler is Venus ruled. So, and I have other indicators in my chart that do show that like I do best with my healing. My 12th house is ruled by Mercury, it sextiles Uranus and stuff. So it's like doing things independently and stuff tend to be really helpful for me, but that's not the case for everyone. So it's also about like, I can look at a chart and analyze like, who's the best person for you to work with? Should you work with someone? Should you be doing this alone? Should you be working with someone? Should you be, it's different for everyone. It's like, should you be working one-on-one in a group setting, online, in person? I consider people's attachment style, which is a psychological concept that reveals how a person reacts when they're triggered. So some people are anxious and they might be more codependent and they don't want to be left alone. They want to be around someone. They're very anxious. These are also similar with like the hypersensitized nervous system, whereas someone who is, but not always, like I could be spiraling and you just won't know. And then the avoidant anxious style is someone where when I'm experiencing stress, I don't want to feel vulnerable. I don't want other people knowing how I feel. I'm just going to retreat. I'm going to be in my own little world. So, some people who are like that, they might do better doing like group work where they don't feel so exposed online. Like for example, me, I've experienced Asian trauma. Someone like me might be like, oh, I want to work with someone who has also experienced it. I want them to have an intimate understanding. I want to feel seen. I want to work with a woman. I want that intimacy. I want that one-on-one connection. Or someone else might be like, no, I want to work, that's familiar, stagnant energy. I want to have new experiences. I want to see the world and experience things differently. I want to work with someone of a different cultural background, someone who sees things from a different perspective. It really does depend on every individual, what's actually best. So I layer on these things, some people's chart might show that there's more like past lives, family, karma stuff, in which case it's like, I'm going to be looking more at the 4th house, the 10th house, the parent access, if they have siblings, the 3rd house, the 11th house. So, because it's also about where does the trauma come from? And also looking at like some people might have something in their chart that says like, oh, okay, chakra work might be good for you because using your voice and your hands, maybe you have like a good Venus, like you have strong Taurus placement, your Gemini, your Mercury is good. So doing mudras, working with your voice, like there's a story that the chart tells that reveals what's best. And what I find is that like so many people are committed to self-growth, myself included, have gone through this journey where they've invested in so many different like things and they're just like, okay, like I want to do this thing because I think it's going to help me, not realizing that their nervous system is dysregulated physiologically. We're addicted to our own chemical production. And so like it's not always just about taking the right approach, but also in order to get started, you need to create a safe space. If you're just doing these things, but you're not in the right state, it's not necessarily going to be sustainable. And so there's like things you can do, small microdose ways to do something new and unfamiliar. So the reptilian part of your brain that's scared of trying new things isn't going to freak out because that part of the brain is saying everything I've done so far has kept me alive, so I need to keep doing it. And so there are times that like, even if like I give you the information of like, here are the information, here's like who you meet, like who they are, whether you should be working with a man or a woman or what environment, where are you going to find them, how is the best way to do this? If you're not working through your subconscious and your unconscious mind, then you might think, oh, this is such a great opportunity, but your subconscious and unconscious mind knows actually there's some red flags there and I'm not going to let you know because I'm scared of success. So I'm going to let you go on this path and then it's not going to get anywhere. So there are things that's important to work on in order to really identify what's best for you and every individual. You know, sometimes it's soul retrieval work, you know, where it's like when you like similar to like when we experience trauma in our physical body and we shut down our emotions and we numb ourselves, our soul, and when we have a painful experience, can break away. And so the soul retrieval is this practice where you bring your the lost parts of your soul back into you. There are certain times of the day that might be better. You know, I might be looking at like your 12th house or Jupiter or maybe Gemini or Mercury, like, you know, because Gemini is about making connections, you know, like if Mercury and Jupiter have a positive aspect, you know, I mean, there has to be like multiple indicators. And I know that
Mhm.
like in astrology, they say if there's 3 indicators, it's like considered to be a pattern. But I've never, like outside of like horary astrology, whenever I see a pattern, I've never just seen 3. It's like 5, 6, 7, 8.
Oh,
Like
wow.
it's a lot. So
So it's like I really like what I'm taking in from this conversation. It's there's so many healing modalities. I've read about so many of them, and I get lost which one to use. And I've used a lot, and a lot of them didn't work on me. And
yeah,
sometimes you come across one, and you're like, and then you recommend it to all your friends, and they're like, nothing happened. And you
mm-hmm.
basically help through the horoscope see which one, like for someone, they, like you said, they should get more air. For others, no, it's just gonna dysregulate them a lot more. For someone like past life regression, can they can, like you said, they can bring in the pain with them instead of healing it and activate it strong.
Exactly.
This is fascinating. I've never seen any specialist or astrologer focus on seeing which healing modality is the right one for a person, because it's very expensive to do those modalities. Like I've tried everything and you end up spending thousands of dollars, but it's so good if someone can help you see through that and direct you towards two,
Yeah.
three modalities in some way.
Yeah. And that's what really inspired me is that like I really thought like, you know, some people they don't heal because they don't want to work on themselves, you know, whereas me, I was doing everything, I was throwing everything at it and it wasn't working. And it's like I know how discouraging it can feel. And so like this signature reading was something that I created because it was a service that I wish existed when I was doing my journey because I have poured so much time, effort, energy, and money. That shit is expensive. And it's even more like deteriorating to your self-esteem when it doesn't work because you start thinking like, why, what's wrong with me kind of thing. And I think that it's something that I think is missing in psychology and stuff. And it's sad, but it's kind of designed that way. Like I can't speak for like everywhere else, but like in the US or in California, like the psychologists, they have to diagnose you right away or they're put at risk, their license is put at risk. So I
Mhm.
have clients who have like become psychologists and then they were like, I'm not really able to help people. So they became a social worker instead. And there are these missing pieces and missing links. And it's about like what works best for you. Like I have a client who runs a ketamine clinic out of her home. And another client who's also a psychologist who's just like, she just hates the idea of ketamine or EMDR and stuff like that because she's like, it's too new. She doesn't feel comfortable with it. But she's really interested in EMDR, which is, it stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing. Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
this practice where it works with your brain and you do these specific eye movements. And what it does is it stimulates and activates and accesses your traumas. And then with these further eye movements, it basically desensitizes the goal is to desensitize you from that trauma. And when you're looking at your eyes, the facilitator can see if you've actually processed it or not. And
Wow.
this is pretty much a generalization, you guys, like, but a pattern that I noticed is that like Cancer risings might do better with EMDR because they have Aquarius in their 8th house of trauma. There's a little bit more of like a durability. And I started noticing this pattern because EMDR has done a lot of like wonderful, offered great results for war vets. And they're very shut down. Whereas Leo risings, and again, you guys, the next sign always dissolves the energy of the previous sign and the previous energy. Leo risings have Pisces in their eighth house, and they're the most sensitized sign. And many of my
Is that why they say they're so dramatic? But it's actually because Pisces is their trauma and Pisces is the
yeah,
most sensitive sign. Because I'm like, Leo is supposed to be the strongest sign. Why am I overreacting emotionally to everything?
listen,
Can,
I have a
can I
whole thought about
can I ask
that.
you to cover? I know it's generalizing, but for
Huh?
our viewers would love it to cover each of the 12 signs quickly with some suggestions for trauma. So we
Um,
see Cancer, now Leo, with to Leo.
oh yeah, so with Leo, I definitely don't like like a lot of my clients, they don't do well with EMDR because like you're already overly stimulated and overly aware and connected with your traumas. So it's not something that like you should do. Um, now, yeah, I'm gonna say this because Capricorn is in the sixth house of health issues. So Leos can also be prone to like depression and stuff as well. And so because Pisces is it is a psychedelic sign, which I do want to talk about that later in a minute. But it has to do with you actually. And me. But anyways, so like ketamine can be really good. And ketamine tends to do better for people who do need to disassociate a little bit because they're overly stimulated. They might do better with like MDMA therapy and stuff, meditation. Now, I have a lot of opinions about Leo risings because I lived in LA, and so I know a lot of actors and stuff, and a lot of Leos they do these roles. We're talking about drama, trauma, and drama here. A lot of them they play these characters, not, and it's like they're poking at their traumas, but they're not actually healing themselves. So if you want to actually heal your traumas, doing like improv can also be something that's really beneficial too. But with this one, I'm looking at that from the fifth house of Sagittarius there, doing something fun, you know. But that's a separate thing. But yeah, so I would say with Leos, that would be a good one. And then with Virgo, the next sign, Virgo rising have Aries in their eighth house, right? So I
And
also have
add to people, it doesn't only have to be your Virgo rising, it might be Virgo moon, or you might have
yep,
stellium in Virgo. So it works for just if you have some strong Virgo energy. So for Virgo,
exactly.
eighth house is what?
Aries, right?
Aries. Okay, what?
Yes,
Physical. They need to run.
absolutely. No, no, that's really the thing. And I don't like exercise, you guys. I love swimming and walking, but I don't like exercise. But Aries do really well with physical exercise. Strength training, running, that kind of a sort of a thing. And speaking of traumas, like so something you can do is like you can physically shake as a way to like release like traumas and stuff.
Like
But
animals when they
exactly. And that's the thing with evolutionary astrology is like that's the missing piece. And that's why humans have like trapped traumas. Um, Doing like bioenergetics and stuff, it's a little bit more like physically active. Although I do want to caution you, Lada, with that one because when you're like shaking like your body, you're stimulating stuff. So if you're like stressed out, that might be too much intensity. So, it does kind of like depend. Yeah, shaking your body, bioenergetics, exercise is really good for Aries. Helping other people, like starting a cause, joining a cause, starting a business. Like a lot of people, wait, what's in your fifth? Yeah, yeah, because they have Aquarius in their fifth house. I mean, this is more for like my generation of like Neptune in Capricorn, because they have that in their fifth house. Sometimes they say that like starting a business is like this like self-growth journey. It's not about making money, but it's like a way to really heal your trauma because you put all of your self-worth out onto the table. So I would say those are a couple of the things, particularly because Virgo is very much about offering support that's going to be really helpful for them. So because Virgo risings want to offer like support in Aries are good at like helping and starting like active causes. That's something that can be helpful. I'm like trying to think because I actually made 2 videos on my YouTube channel about this, and I'm like, what did I say? That was so long ago. Um, but for what were you saying?
Just kind of general direction. You don't have
Yeah,
to go into great detail and give
yeah.
phone numbers of the healers. It's
No,
like
no, no,
Virgo
no.
physical. It's
Yeah,
physical. It's maybe anger therapy. Go scream at someone,
yeah,
you know, the
yeah. That was
Aries
really good for Aries.
at someone, but
Absolutely.
punch something. I don't know, kind of.
Yeah.
And then maybe next is Libra.
Yeah, so they have Taurus in their 8th house. For you guys, it's really important to remember that Taurus, the energy moves the slowest, so it's important to be really like patient with yourself. It may take you longer to heal unless you have like Mars here or Mars in aspect with your with Venus. But I would say here, really working on your sense of self-worth, looking at what beliefs you've inherited from your family, what are you holding on to? And purging is something that's really good. It's if you are prone to like hanging on to like a lot of clothes and stuff like that, or different things. Um, really recognizing what your core values are and making sure that you put yourself in an environment. So the fastest way to identify your core values, because I used to hate the concept of core values, because it took so long to, it just wasn't clear to me. But think about the shit that viscerally pisses you off. Those are indicators that your core values are being met. Identify what those are, because Taurus is on the opposite axis of Scorpio. So what's going to support you is processing your trauma. Mars is also about anger, rules Scorpio. So looking at what your core values are and making sure that they're being met in your environment. These are going to be really important things, especially with like family, making money, things of that nature. And then the next sign, Scorpio has Gemini in their 8th house. Um, this could be tapping and stuff like EFT, emotional freedom technique, using your hands. This is like there's a lot of different ways to do this. I don't really like even though I'm not making the amount of money I want, I still deeply, truly love myself. That script doesn't work for me, but like you can just kind of like, I call it bitch ranting. Just talk about the shit that pisses you off, and you don't have to worry that you're perpetuating it. When you're doing tapping, you're actually processing it. Also mudra, music, making things with your hands, and stuff, doing community service work or working with like your local neighborhood and stuff, community work. That's something that can be helpful. I know a lot of Scorpio risings who also like when they get traumatized, they start DJing. I can always tell when someone's not doing well, like they're just like, I need to DJ, I need to do something with my hands, and they get very like, or like calligraphy, regulating your nervous system, and stuff like that. That's a big thing. They tend to be really good with like something like somatic therapy or, I mean, that's good for everyone, I would say though.
Journaling,
And
journaling.
yeah, oh my God, yes. Why did I forget about that? Yeah, no, definitely. And I would say coloring and stuff, like things that are like, oh, inner child work, connecting with your inner child. That's going to be really good for them.
I've noticed as my son is Scorpio rising, Scorpio moon, when he gets very frustrated and he can't act out anymore because we tell him go to your room, calm down, he starts painting, he starts drawing something that's exactly like you said.
Yeah. Um, and that's great. Now, let's see. The next sign is Sagittarius, right? Sagittarius. So they have Sagittarius have Cancer in their 8th house. So this one could be like family healing with mother wounds and stuff, float therapy. I have this theory that float therapy is the feminine version and cryotherapy is the masculine version. And so I guess anyways. And so float therapy is this thing where you guys like you go into this water and it floats you up, and it's supposed to mimic being in the womb. and stuff. It's also great for people who experience a lot of physical pain because it's like weightless and stuff. So it alleviates some of that physical discomfort and stuff. So water therapy is also really good as well. Water healing, going to the ocean and stuff. But cryotherapy is like the opposite, and you get put in like this frozen chamber, and like it drops below like a freezing temperature. They put music and you're dancing, and what it does is it activates your fight and flight, but you are handling it well. So the next time you get triggered, you're going to be resilient. It's not what I would recommend for cancers, because cancers, you're supposed to create comfort.
That's Sagittarius. We're talking about
Yes,
Sagittarius.
yes, yeah.
Because
But
Cancer
like
is
with
the eighth
having
house of trauma. And I have a
exactly,
lot of experience with Sagittarius rising people, from my closest friends to my daughter. And she, for example, she needs to be cuddled. When she's in trauma, she just wants to be held tight.
yeah,
And my best friend cancers, they need a bath. The moment she
yeah.
feels, there were moments where she felt like, I feel violated. She needs to take like a 1 hour bath to wash it out, which is the Cancer
And
energies.
salt water is especially good for them. Also with Pisces here too, for Leo risings too. Pisces, like salt water baths and stuff, very good options here. And the mother wound healing,
Family
family
constellations.
constellation. Exactly. There you go. Um, and also like making your place feel like a home. Because Sagittariuses tend to want to like travel and go to all these different places. They, and so if they feel a sense of trauma, they have a hard time feeling at home. So even when you're traveling, create things that feel like home. With one of my clients, I told her she loves Disneyland. I told her to create a Disneyland space in her home. That's something, whatever makes you feel comfortable, whatever soothes you, nurturing yourself, cooking for yourself, spending time with family when you're feeling women's circle, working like doing like healing circles at the beach with women. These
Beautiful.
are things that are really
You're
good.
getting goosebumps. Such great ideas.
And now let's see, Capricorn have Leo in their eighth house. Oh, so these are people that might do well with improv work. Um, it sounds weird, but chiropractic care, spinal alignment and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
like I think being out in the sun is so important, because Capricorns like to be in the dark, so the sun is going to be really healing for them, working on their self-confidence, putting themselves in environments where they show up as a leader. Dancing, dance,
Oh,
somatic
yeah.
therapy,
Yeah.
hula dancing, stuff like that.
It is about creativity, Leo, the
Yeah,
eighth
oh
house.
yeah,
Capricorns
art,
need to do any kind of art therapy,
yeah,
creativity,
anything that's
imagining,
creative
yeah.
that you enjoy. Which thing?
Maybe even childhood, something to do with childhood, because
Yes.
Leo, the
This is
inner
also
child.
inner
Great.
child. Yeah, exactly. Stuff like that. And then with Aquarius, you have Virgo in your eighth house. So this could be providing like working on your health, doing detoxes, being good about your nutrition. Virgo is the virgin, and so doing like it's more prone to toxins. So having toxic overload can be something that's really bad for you. And it could be very traumatizing. You're going to be more hypersensitive to that. And you also have Cancer in your sixth house, right? So, digestive issues, detoxing that, also somatic, nervous regulating work, journaling, reading books on things that like doing practical things to help you, like whatever it is that's upsetting you, reading books, journaling, being like, what steps can I take? Working for like a charity organization. But I want to go back to talking about the detoxing a little bit. Doing a parasite cleanse and a liver cleanse together and stuff. Maria and I actually want to do a video on that actually, so we'll talk about that more. Um, But yeah, like that's gonna be something that's gonna make huge difference. Doing like doing different taking herbs and stuff as well. And whatever the problem is, you need to fix it. You need to find a solution. You know, you can't wallow in it. Like you need to be like, okay, this is the problem. This is what I need to correct it. If you're not in a state to be able to do that, find someone to help you. You know, like brainstorm, talk to someone about it, and then resolve it. That's gonna
I
be
can
a big
totally agree. Aquarius rising, the only thing that helped me, and I always thought, what are those? I tried all kinds of therapies. I was thinking there must be some trauma because why do I thought I probably forgot the trauma. It's a past life because I don't remember anything that upset me so much. And I tried hypnotherapy, I tried regression, I tried so many like drawing. You know what helped me? Parasite cleanse. All my psychological, emotional issues, what I thought was trauma, must have been toxins. Maybe, and trauma is locked in toxins. So I don't need to understand what the trauma is. I don't need to remember that in a past lifetime I was killed or whatever. And for some people, it's necessary. For me, it was just cleaning the body. And oh,
well.
depression, sadness, stuckness, disappeared and
Toxicity
working out.
is a type of trauma. That's a type of physical trauma.
True.
So, and
Yeah.
also Aquarius risings are neurodivergent. The neurodivergent have a hypersensitized brain and are more prone to having toxicity in their body. So they need to
So,
purge that. So, and that also is correlated with like ADHD symptoms, autism. It's a whole thing.
mm.
Um, oh, I forgot to mention because now we're going into Pisces, and that reminded me for Leo risings. Even though this is good for everyone, for Pisces, lymphatic massages and
Oh,
stuff,
Leo rising and
lymphatic stuff.
lymphatic massage.
Yeah.
Or
That's
even
gonna,
jumping, because Pisces is the
oh
eighth
yeah, for
house, and the lymph
rebounding.
moves with Jumping. And as a
Yeah.
strong Leo myself, together with the detoxes that I did and fasting, I feel happiest when I'm hungry. I feel like when I don't eat for some
Yeah.
reason.
Oh my God, I
Jumping.
can't
I got
imagine
a
that.
mini trampoline, mini rebounder,
Yeah.
5, 10 minutes. It's incredible. So as a Leo and Aquarius, both of those suggestions, and also the beach, maybe as a Leo moon, when I'm in the beach
Yeah.
water, seaside water,
Yeah.
it's heat. It depression, sadness, health issues go away.
Yeah. So what I'm doing right now, you guys, is I'm stimulating and massaging my vagus nerve, which is a nerve that connects your brain and your gut together. So when you do this just a little bit every day, it makes such a huge difference because it's gonna sound gross, but like all the poop and all this shit in your gut is literally going to your brain. And then people are wondering why they have ADHD and depression and all this stuff. And you can take medication, you can take supplements, but if all the toxins just keep loading up on your brain, this isn't going to be good for you. So doing the massages back here behind your
Show
ear,
us. Can you show behind? Can you show us
yeah,
exactly?
like right here. So it's like
Okay.
behind your ear here.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And you just massage this, you know, whether it's a minute, 5 minutes a day, this is going to make such a huge difference because it reduces brain inflammation. It gets rid of the toxins in your body and stuff. So, you know, you can take all the supplements, but if all the toxins is still coming up, then it's like you need to drain it. This is literally draining all of the crap out of your body. So this is something that's really good. So yeah, and then I'm gonna keep doing this because I didn't do this
Yeah.
today. But let's
We're
see. So
next
then
to Pisces, and the
Pisces, yeah,
eighth house is the
it is
eighth
gonna
house.
be Taurus. Is it Taurus? That's
No, Pisces opposite
oh
is
no,
Virgo.
Virgo. So it's Libra.
Libra. Libra is the
Libra.
eighth.
Why did
Yeah.
I say
So for
Aries?
Pisces,
Okay, yeah. So Libra doing a therapy one-on-one, um, doing some sort
Pisces,
of
right?
art therapy
Art therapy.
doing some sort of art therapy. Why am I like drawing a blank with Libra? I'm a Libra moon. I should know this. What do,
So we're,
but
we're talking. This is for Pisces. I want to repeat so people don't get
yeah,
confused. We're talking about Pisces rising people, people with strong moon, and Libra is the eighth house, how to process trauma and get unstuck. And it can be really talk it out one on one, like you said, the
yes,
Libra and it's
one-on-one
air.
talk therapy.
If you like breathing, that's air. Libra is air.
Yeah, but that's more Aquarius and Gemini. I would actually say doing like hula hooping. dancing, belly dancing, the hips and stuff. It's about creating that balance and even like decorating your space, creating harmony, doing relationship trauma healing work. And it doesn't even have to be like romantic partnerships, but like learning about like communication, you know, like non-violent communication. You don't have to be violent, you don't have to have like violent communication, but something where it's like something where it's one-on-one, you know, and engaging in art therapy that's one-on-one, that's balanced and stuff. I used to do like these offer like these paint therapy classes, and I want to actually do this with astrology as like a live workshop as well, where like you facilitate people through doing specific like painting and stuff. That can be doing that one-on-one with Libra would be really good. The colors that we use they help us to psychologically process things even if you don't know what it is. So you just go through this motion of like, okay, I'm feeling upset or I'm feeling an emotion. Okay, what color does that represent? And just putting those colors on like canvas and then being like, how do you want to feel? You know, and looking at like, what is the imbalance? What is the injustice? Doing a lot of, I would say, affirmations might work well for Libras and stuff.
For Pisces. Pisces.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, you guys. For Libra rising that have or for Pisces rising that have Libra in their 8th house, affirmations could be something that works really well as well. I would say, I think the big thing is a lot of my Pisces rising signs, they really do benefit from like hip work. That's a big thing.
Libra rules the hips, and trauma for them is probably locked in the lower back and hips for them in some way.
But you know, also like breast massage therapy and stuff. This is also true for Sagittarius risings who have Cancer in their 8th house as well. Particularly like it, but going back to Pisces risings, where you have Libra in your 8th house, if you don't have like a very good Venus, or your Taurus also has some like challenges as well. There's a connection there with the feeling of self-worth and stuff. So it seems a little backwards, but the signs that are ruled by the same planets, the other sign also plays a role too. So Taurus comes before Libra in the 8th house for Pisces risings. So Libra is about your relationships, right? It's you plus one. But the first sign that Venus rules is Taurus, which is about you, your resources. So looking at your self-worth and making sure that when you're in one-on-one situations that your self-worth is being met. Doing breast massage work, doing things where learning to be more decisive and stuff. There's a lot of like people-pleasing tendencies to have to work through, finding ways to communicate to make sure both your needs and the other person's needs are being met. That's a big thing for Pisces rising.
Beautiful. Yeah. And Aries now?
Oh, that's right. Aries risings are going to have Scorpio in the 8th house. This is interesting because their trauma house is also ruled by Mars. So these are people who can benefit from psychology, tarot, astrology, and honestly, like sex therapy, tantra healing and stuff. Sometimes like sex magic and whatnot, because the 8th house is like your 7th house, your clients and your spouses, other people's resources and stuff. Just sort of using that.
Also a thing like even hypnotherapy, because Scorpio is
absolutely
self auto-suggestion.
Yes, definitely.
What else? Scorpio is a traditional psychology as well, or just
they're the ones that are good for that.
Yeah. Energy work in some way as well.
Yeah.
Is there something like revenge work where you can go and
honestly, probably.
you can live out your revenge fantasies in some way.
Shadow work, you know, that's where It's like really embodying that like darkness. You know, I think those are the people that like they do the type of therapy of shadow work where they're like, this is a safe space. So people talk about like their darkest fantasies, their fears, and you know, I've had like I have friends that are like twins, and one of the twins is like just very like passive, and the other one is like really aggressive. And when she does shadow work, she was like, you know, they piss me off. And she's like, and I like, she starts off talking about like this meditation, and it sounds really beautiful. And then she's like, and then I stab them, and then I felt better. And I'm just like, oh my god.
It's obviously healing her traumas. So because Scorpio is also quite a physical sign, so for Aries rising Scorpio, there is even some physicality to move that trauma in some way as well.
Yeah, some like water exercises as well. Even candle therapy and stuff. Because Mars is also Mars is a fire sign, and it's because it's also like witchcraft, you know, using magic.
You
But
know, for me, what really helps is the very strong Aries, like 4 planets in.
I'm sorry, say that
For
again.
for me, what has really helped is a very strong Aries with 4 planets in Aries, has been studying about life after death. Like I read every week a book about life after death. I watch videos about that, and that's
Have
very
you
scorpionic.
have you read the book with the end in mind?
Yes.
Oh, I love
What
that
do you
book.
mean at the end?
Huh? It's
What do you
the
mean with the end?
That's the name of the book, With the End in Mind. Have you read it?
No, I haven't. I
Oh,
will
it's
check it.
this
No, I absolutely love.
Oh, it's this beautiful book written by an end of life therapist. And she talks about like what people actually experience when they're dying. And a lot of times like people who aren't dying have this idea of what they're going through, but it's actually the opposite. And it helps people who are experiencing the loss of, who are preparing for, you know, losing a loved one, but also people who are transitioning to the other side. And it's just, it's not like this dark, heavy scorpionic energy. It's actually very beautiful, almost kind of like Pisces ending, healing, and stuff like that. That's really amazing. And actually, yeah, honestly, a lot. I'm trying to think about this, and I'm like, I do have friends that like they have looked at like past lives regression and death, or like looking at people who have like died, because Scorpio is about death and rebirth, you know. So looking at they like read specifically stories of people who died and came back. This is
Yes,
something
that's
that's
my near-death experience. That's
lots of
everything to me.
healing there.
Mhm.
Yeah, and lots of like death and healing stuff. There's like these like Phoenix philosophy and Phoenix energy healing stuff that I've heard about, where people like pull the toxic, like the energy trapped trauma out of you. There's some stuff like that. But I, with Scorpios, I think I really do gravitate towards therapy.
Exorcism can work for Aries with Scorpion date house.
So cool. That's very healing. I'm not gonna lie. So people need that. Actually, I know someone who, when her cousin passed away, she partied a lot, she did a lot of drugs, and then like a spirit entered inside of her, and she's Catholic, and so she was taken to the desert, and she did have an exorcism. And
Wow.
after that, she actually said that she used to get a lot of tarot readings, but after that experience, no tarot reader wanted to read her. They say the spirits don't want me to read you. So there was like this change that actually took place. But like she, after that, like exorcism, she really just started healing, and you know, because the shit is scary, you know.
Yes.
But like also researching, studying like maybe like spirits and whatnot, you know, like carefully, obviously, you guys. But these are the kind of things, you know, looking at the paranormal and
Exactly.
stuff. Yeah.
Conspiracies. So
Yeah.
you start seeing that your own traumas are nothing compared to the traumas. I remember one way of when I was a child, I was must have been, I don't know, past lifetimes or something, because I started drawing a lot of traumatic things, like people being cut in half, being And my parents were wondering, we didn't have TV. I've never seen such things. Maybe it was my way of healing with as a strong Aries, Scorpio in the eighth house. I was
Yeah.
literally showing how people were being tortured, painting it, and
Actually,
it was
you know
weird,
what?
but
I think something that would be really healthy because the eighth house is a water sign, it's about releasing and stuff, is like to maybe like for those of you guys who resonate, to use like charcoal that's black, and like when you're angry, just draw like whatever comes to you and just know that you can always draw over it. Have a sketchbook and just pour that out.
yes, my psychologist says you have to draw your own monsters, and I love that assignment. I was like, I could see them really in a very scorpionic way. They were almost like reptilian, like going around me, my tremors, my demons, and my son, who is also Aries. Also, when he's angry or upset, he starts drawing monsters, and maybe he takes out
Yeah.
the other one. That's a great
Yeah.
idea. So, I don't want to
We,
make this long. Let's
oh
move
yeah.
to the sign Taurus, and then we have, I think,
Taurus has, what is it? Sagittarius in their eighth house, right?
yes.
So traveling, higher education, spirituality, philosophy, like do like doing like reading books on prosperity, universal laws, um,
Perfect.
archery,
Ah,
and stuff,
horse
setting your personal goals, horse riding. Yes. Oh my God. Horse therapy, I think, is a thing.
riding. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I would say things like that. Going on like adventures and stuff. Like there's like these, it's kind of similar, I guess, to like an Aries theme of like physical exercise. Like there are sometimes places that you can go to where like they have like these little like things you like jump through hoops and then you run and you do like these little adventure. It's like a amusement park, but like an athletic thing, but it's supposed to be fun. I don't think it's fun. Whatever. Going to the top of a mountain, rock climbing or something, going somewhere where you see things from a higher perspective.
Yeah. Maybe
Yeah,
even going to the top of the mountain. Yeah. Or even climbing up on a high building and looking down.
um, I used to be an on-site property manager facilitator for a private club, and we used to host spiritual retreats. And I know someone with this placement. When she went, she was like, "Oh my God, I feel like I'm healing," and I was like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense. Sagittarius in your eighth house is going to be healing for you." And it was a retreat on top of a hill, and there was a tree house.
Oh.
So yeah.
What about people asking, what about sound healing, like singing bowls? Who would that
Yeah,
be?
that would be really great for Pisces, Taurus, Libra people where there's like sound
Would that be
where
the Pisces, Taurus, Libra rising, or Pisces, Taurus, and Libra in the eighth house?
I would say both.
Both.
Because like your
Yes.
first house is going to heal your physical body, so it's going to release traumas, and your eighth house is going to help you with your trauma with your moon, similar to like the rising placement and stuff. So absolutely. And even
So,
if these
so
planets
singing
are in the 12th
bowls
house,
would be for Leos, would be for Libra rising as well, would be for what else did you say? Who has
what did it?
Libra in the you said
Taurus.
Libra, Venus, the Venus, the Venus, and the Pisces, Taurus, and Libra. You said
Yeah.
either Pisces, Taurus, and Libra rising people, or those with the eighth house in Pisces, Taurus, Libra.
Yeah. But these can also be like placements in the 12th house too, because that's
Uh,
subconscious, unconscious, stuff as well. So these are
what about
definitely
the final sign, Gemini? Or Gemini,
Gemini risings are going
Capricorn,
to have
eighth house.
Capricorn in the eighth house. Father trauma healing, working on leadership. Capricorn is one of those signs where I feel like the modernized version just only to focus, it's a little bit one-dimensional, but it's ruled by Saturn. It's a karmic planet. So looking at your past, working with your reptilian brain, finding a way to be security oriented, processing your fears, possibly related to your profession. This is where it's like you can work on like daddy issues as well. But definitely finding ways to feel security oriented, maybe connecting with like the shadow qualities of like Capricorn is very like cold and kind of like can be like dry and doesn't want to like heal with that emotional side, but that's kind of important in order to heal. So connecting with that, the Cancer in the opposite house and working with that because that's going to be the thing that supports you. But also finding ways to healthy ways to create boundaries. You know,
That's
not doing it to be avoidant, but in a way that's like what there's a difference between creating avoidance, creating a barrier because you're trying to avoid something versus this is to secure myself, to stabilize myself. You know, they I think that for them, holding a high position in business can be difficult for them, but it can take a while because Capricorn does rule like old age, but it's something that would be really beneficial for them. Studying stuff on successful people, businesses, strategically finding ways to bring that into your life. I have Capricorn in my 7th house, so I'm just like, I'm still working to integrate with my Capricorn. So but I'm trying to think like, I think the big thing is being security oriented, daddy issues, and really working on your fears.
Yes. Yeah.
Saturn,
Capricorn. So for Gemini,
yeah,
the fear is because Capricorn be their 8th house. And
yeah.
it's almost
Oh,
like Capricorn resistant. So they might have resistance to change and transformation
absolutely. You know
sometimes.
what? So there's different things. Um, Doing somatic therapy because Gemini is about regulating the nervous system, and they might be the people that when they're like having trauma, they might experience shutdown. In which case, like
Oh
a
no.
lot of the recommendations are usually for like people who are like overstimulated. But like for example, like somatic therapy or releasing trauma where it's like related to like your bones and stuff is really good. Like in like Chinese philosophy, medicine and stuff like that, they hit the back of their left lip. Can you hear me?
You disappeared
Oh
for a bit. You
no. Okay.
disappeared for a bit. But it's
So
good.
I was just mentioning that because Gemini risings, they rule the nervous system for Capricorn, doing some nervous regulating work related to like where the bone is and stuff. So this is an area where you can like move like slide your fingers a lot around your collarbone. And when the energy moves, you like yawn or something. So this is something that I find that people who tend to not be receptive to a lot of the somatic therapy that's designed for people who are overly stimulated, this one works really well. And in Chinese medicine and in Chinese philosophy, there are like these like vitality exercises that you can do. And there's one, oh my God, can you hear me? I'm gonna keep talking, but there are these vitality exercises where you tap the back of your knee to stimulate some like energy.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense because if
So
trauma is stored in Capricorn for Gemini, that would be around the knees as well. So you can move the energy by tapping there.
yeah, I have
Wonderful.
yeah,
Well, it's kind of more
yeah,
practical.
because I have
It's
Hygeia
more
in
practical.
Capricorn.
So it's not so much emotional processing feelings. It's really like hands-on practical things to do. Get onto your
Yeah,
career.
it's something earthy. You need to be able to like touch it.
Thank you, Jamie. I absolutely people saying we don't want this to
Exactly.
finish. They're like, we don't want this to finish, but we can't wait to
Oh,
have you again in a few weeks
oh,
or next month.
thank
Have your
you.
experience here. Can't wait
Yeah,
to discuss a lot more topics with you. Absolutely delighted. As you can see, Jamie,
absolutely.
people are saying this lady is phenomenal, is so knowledgeable. So I'm so excited to have you on our team. I'm putting a link below
Thank
for
you.
anyone who wants to connect with Jamie. She offers two types of readings now. One is more connected to what we're talking about now, and the other one is more on probably more general life questions, developments in life. She's offering great discount on both readings. I'm putting a link. Connect to Jamie, write to her, contact her, make her welcome into our team. I'm very proud and excited for the new generation of astrologers that exist.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I did want to mention that um, the special price is going to be for the first 15 people because I don't want to get.
Uh, we lost Jamie. Her internet dropped just on time. But I just wanted to say that the first 15 people that order a reading, they get $200 off of the special reading that Jamie has. And I put the link below. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And thank you. I hope this was helpful for you